We were just playing trivia before you got here, and Jim got the correct answer. Those of you just joining now on YouTube or X, the trivia question of the night to win big cash prizes, Rice-A-Roni and 2 weeks in Philadelphia is which two senior Obama administration officials' names began with a silent P? Put it in the chat. If you're already here on two-way, you heard the answer. But if you're watching on X or YouTube, please put your answer in the chat. Which two senior Obama administration officials' last names began with silent P's? Thought of that randomly for reasons I can't explain. Our guest tonight is John Podhoretz. John Podhoretz. Oh, no, not a silent P. John Podhoretz will be here momentarily. And John and I will run through the news of the day. And then we'd be honored by, if you're here on the two-way platform, you're participating by raising your hand. Let's go for 3 new people tonight. Let's do our thing where we'll cancel the show. Last episode of Two-Way tonight, unless we get 3 people who've never asked a question on this show. If you've asked a question on another two-way show, you are eligible to save the program. So raise your hand, please, if you'd like to be in the conversation. Maybe we'll call on people who've spoken before. We'll see. The president did an interview with Brett Baer. We'll have a little bit of that for you. Brett was on the trip in the Middle East and got invited to at least one big event. I know I saw at least it said he was invited. But John and I will run through the news of the day. And then again, we'll take your questions. So I would say no massive news, a little bit of news around the president, a little bit of news around Jim Comey, a little bit of news around the administration, a little bit of news on Capitol Hill, some rock and roll news. The president attacked 2 of the most famous rock stars of the last 50 years today on Truth Social. And I'll tell you, just because I know you're desperately interested in my preferences, I'm big fans of both. Big fans of both. So that's a good tease. We'll tell you about that. I want to tell you about something that's coming up on Monday on this program. Monday. Some people say, Mark, the show's too long. But other people say, no, Mark, the show's not long enough. Monday, 2-hour edition of Two-Way Tonight. And in the second hour, we're going to be joined by Steve Ballmer. He's the founder of USA Facts and, of course, the former CEO of Microsoft. Steve Ballmer has started an organization called USA Facts. It's been around for a bit. And they do a miraculous public service. They take government data, and they present it on their website and social media in a very user-friendly way. And you might think, well, who cares? Like, I'll just read it off the government data. No, they find it, they organize it, they shape it, they present it in an incredibly compelling way. And one of the topics we'll talk about with Steve, besides the reason he founded this organization, is the big tax bill that, of course, is being debated right now and hit a speed bump today. But Steve will be here. He'll explain USA Facts. He will talk about their latest data coming and video coming regarding tax rates. Incredibly important, not wonky, incredibly important for everybody in America, for their own personal wealth and finances, but also for fairness. And then we'll take your questions. And so an incredible opportunity to ask a very smart person who's taking the good fortune he's had in business and applying it to this organization. So Monday, again, regular program at 6 Eastern, 7 Eastern. Steve Ballmer will join us. All right. I'm going to not do the news by myself tonight. Sometimes I like to have a color commentator, a Dandy Don to my Howard Cosell. And what better person to be Dandy Don than John Podhoretz. So John Podhoretz, I was thinking when I heard you were going to be joining us tonight, there are 2 things that haven't happened in a country mile. I know that's not a unit of measure of time, but you get my point. Number 1, you haven't been on here, at least not as a guest. Maybe you lurk. Right. And number 2, I can't remember the last time I had the honor of being invited on the commentary podcast.
Okay, well, we'll rectify number 2. Number 1 is just sort of like Passover.
Yeah.
And kids.
I don't know much about Jewish holidays,
summer break,
but you haven't been here in like 3 months. Passover is not like multiple, right?
No, but for some reason,
busy.
My 6 o'clocks got very busy. I don't really know why.
Well,
I love this, so I'm delighted to be. I'm delighted to be back. And
love having you on, and it's a good night for you to be on because there's a lot of stuff. I'm super curious to hear what you think. I'll say regarding number 2, I can only attribute it to an obvious decline in my performance.
No, I would say that I'm surprised you would have the time. First of all, we have a time crunch.
We do, but you pre-tape sometimes.
When you're about to do the morning meeting, and that has been problematic.
It is.
And you also have like 7 shows now. So
I have
I
to
would
say,
like to point
I
out
appreciate that. I appreciate that. I will say one of the extraordinary qualitative signs I have that two-way is catching on is I get recognized all the time on the streets of New York, and they don't say, we know you from this, we know you from that. They say, love two-way, and they say it with passion. So my point is, I'm applying for the job. I'd
Yes,
like to be
you
back on
got
the
it.
commentary
Okay.
podcast.
By the way,
But
I want to tell everybody that I was looking today at the Apple podcast charts because I was actually looking at the YouTube put out its
yeah,
first list of the
that's
top
right.
100
Top
podcasts
podcast,
that
video
are
podcasts. Yeah.
videoed. And so I looked there, and then I decided I was going to check out where things were on the Apple top 100, and I
Yeah.
think you're on the Apple top 100.
I'm in the top 100 of
In the
all
Megan,
podcasts
yeah,
and I'm in the
yes.
for next up, and I'm in the top uh 15 for news podcasts.
So I'm
And
just saying, okay,
yeah,
well, I'm
so I'm
sorry that I underrate
yeah,
it's for
yeah,
some of us, as
yeah,
we say at Passover, Dayenu, it should have been enough that
yeah.
you were in the top 100 podcasts
Well,
out of the
I'm
3
honored.
million podcasts
I'm
in the
honored. I'm
world.
so grateful to my colleagues who work on the program with me. But I will say I don't mind competing against the non-news podcast, but I really do. You know, I mean, I
Well, you're
compete
not going to
against
be right. So the number one podcast
gossip
in
and
the country
sports.
right now, the number one podcast in the country is Amy Poehler.
She's been number one since I started doing
Okay,
Next Up, and I've
okay, but
looked at
she's
the Apple
only been,
charts.
that podcast is like a month old,
Well,
something like that. So anyway,
to bore everybody who doesn't have a podcast, although that's a shrinking few
who
number
who is
people
that?
left.
Yeah,
I'll just say this: the Apple chart. I got to number 5 like overall, and I got to number 2 in news. The Apple chart's misleading. Okay, the Apple chart is not based on downloads or likes. It's based on like momentum and trajectory. So if you have 2 downloads and then you get 100, you'll be very high because it's about the rate of growth.
yeah,
So it's actually better that I'm in the top 20 of news now than when
right.
I was number 2 in news because
Right.
I've been on longer. We've done I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember if I've done 4 or 6 episodes. I think I've done 6 episodes.
Right.
6. Anyway, great to have John here. John, as folks know, is the uber lord of commentary. One of the most important periodicals in America, and has been for quite some time, with a bevy of writers who are intellectually vibrant and tell people if they'd like to enjoy your work and commentary, how they can do that, please.
Go to commentary.org. We have a daily blog. We have a monthly magazine. We have many features for you to enjoy. Subscribe, because that's what you need to do to get the full.
Please support.
And
It's worth every penny.
80 years of commentaries archives, which are literally a history lesson in America from the end of World War II till today, and the world, and Israel, and the Jewish people. It's an extraordinary resource.
It really is. It's a piece of history. It's a piece of American history, as well as compelling journalism and writing. I realize now I forgot to finish the thought. I said I get recognized on the street for two-way, but my point was not that. My point was that as a setup to say, whenever I'm on the commentary podcast, and I'm on lots of different things, whenever I'm on your podcast, I hear from people all over the country. There's just something about it.
It's very sticky. It's in the sense that the people who like it are very committed and devoted to it, and we do it 5 days a week, and it astonishes me how incredibly consistent the numbers are day after day after day. Like, it's the same, and people really are. I'm flabbergasted, frankly, because I'm sick of my own voice, and I don't know why other people don't get sick of it too. And
I'll say
my wife is sick of it, and my children. But there we are. People who aren't related to me continue to listen. Yes.
I'll tell you one more thing about the commentary podcast, which is not true of many podcasts. It's always good. I've never listened to an episode and it wasn't good. You guys are just very good, consistently good and interesting. So,
and for that, I honestly, I mean, the people on the podcasts who have been, I'm certainly Christine Rosen has been on with you, and
she has,
and Matt Connetti, Abe Greenwald, Seth Mandel, that we are all very much in sync, and so we don't. The interesting thing is, commentary is not it doesn't sort of, unlike two-way, it's not an effort to sort of bring people together or not, or represent different points of view in different ways. It's very much focused on presenting a certain view and vision of the world, and we're all sort of in harmony on that. And that can be boring sometimes, but it can also mean that you don't have to have arguments about how to set the table. Do you know what I mean?
I
And
do.
so
I
as a
do.
result, we can sort of get to first principles, or we can get to the meat of the matter without establishing where we agree, where we disagree, or having fights
Yeah.
over certain types of things.
Yeah.
So it's got a different feeling from other
Does. Guys, I see, I never read the chat, but I do glance at it. If you're here to hear the day's news, go to another show. John and I are just chatting. We're catching up. We'll get to the news in 1 minute. I'll say, tell your friend Matt Continetti that having him on two-way is still the white whale for me. It's just like all I think
I will
about
tell.
is to
Okay,
get him on this.
I will tell him. I will tell him. I
Okay.
think he also has like a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old, and it's
Yeah.
actually hard to
Yeah.
cut through that 6 o'clock.
All right, let's pretend it's 6 o'clock Eastern
Okay.
time, and let's do the news. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Two Way tonight. I'm Mark Halperin. Don't put smack in the chat. Raise your hand if you're here on the Two Way platform and you want to ask a question. All right, John.
Yes.
Mr. Abrego Garcia had another hearing today, and the Trump administration lawyer continues to say we don't need to bring him back. We shouldn't have sent him, but we don't need to bring him back. Maybe we have that headline. I can't remember. There you go. U.S. claim of state secrets privilege in Kilmer Abrego case is inadequate, judge says. So the district court judge has not been particularly bullish on the government's argument, but nonetheless, Mr. Abrego Garcia, what I like to call an El Salvador man, not a Maryland man, remains in El Salvador,
Right.
and the judge hasn't moved it very far. Another occurrence related to the courts and immigration. Number one, Sam, please. The U.S. Supreme Court, voting 7-2, blocked the administration's efforts to use the alien. It's called the Alien Law. Is that what it's called?
Alien Enemies Act.
Alien Enemies Act. Thank you.
Yeah.
The Aliens Enemies Act to deport people. So, John, where are we in the macro battle between two branches, between the judiciary, which sometimes has voted in favor of the administration, but there are more rulings against them, and the administration's efforts? Are we in the beginning of the end of the beginning of the beginning? Where are we?
I don't think that the administration will move on the Abrego Garcia case until it gets higher than Boasberg's court.
Yeah.
That would be my sense, is that they're establishing.
But how about in the macro fight over all the range of issues? We've seen district court judges, courts of appeals, Supreme Court. Is it clear where this is headed in terms of the judiciary's posture towards Trump using extraordinary measures for a variety of means to deport?
I think that there are ways we gotta split these up. I think that the place that the administration will prevail is on the matter of the discretion that the Secretary of State has to deport. That is what is involved in the cases of Mahmoud Khalil and some of the other green card holders or student visa holders or stuff like that. The law says the Secretary of State can say that somebody's presence in the United States is inimical, even if they have legal status here, and that those things that are being blocked, I don't think in the end that the courts that the administration can fail in that regard. The legislation is pretty airtight on those matters. The novelty use of the Alien Enemies Act and some other things, I think they're in real trouble on.
Yeah.
Because liberals don't like the policies ideologically, and conservative judges don't like novelty, don't like reading old laws in novel new ways. Like that, a lot of them, it's where they came from as jurists and from law school onward to believe that original intent is what matters in the writing and drafting of laws, that you don't just say they mean something new. So you've been feeling that way for 30 years. You're going to feel that way about Trump.
Yep. One of many angry truth posts today. There it is. The Supreme Court won't allow us to get criminals out of our country! Exclamation point. I guess maybe I'm being unfair saying it's angry. It's all capped and exclamation pointed.
He's a little angry. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I think he has had the best 3 or 4 days of his presidency abroad.
Okay, we're going to talk about that.
I think this has been, there's a lot that's going on I don't like.
I can't wait to hear. I can't wait to hear your view on that.
But I
keep
think
going.
that it was optically, and procedurally, it was
Yeah.
an unvarnished triumph for
Michael
him.
Deaver on steroids.
Yeah,
I've called
exactly.
it.
The camels and the women
Yeah.
whipping their hair and
Yeah.
sitting there in the palace and getting all the
Yeah.
CEOs behind him and everything and all of that, and his own demeanor and comportment in these settings, which seemed amused, friendly, favorable, like he was enjoying himself, like he was representing the United States in a spirit of
Yeah.
high good humor.
Yes.
And then I don't know, it's late at night or whatever it is over there, and then he goes on to Truth Social and he like has hissy fits
Yeah.
after he should be in a good mood. That's what I think.
Invite me to speculate.
Why?
Here's my theory. This is stipulating no reporting. I haven't asked anybody about it, but I had the same thought. My speculation is he loves being overseas. He loves this trip for all the reasons you suggested, but he likes the US, right? Like he's a man of Queens. He likes the US and he knows and he's like reading like the US papers and he wants to be and he knows he's frustrated and sad he's not here in a way and he wants to make a splash back home and I'm sure he knows how great the pictures are because they're showing him their tweets, the staff tweets with the pictures. Mm-hmm. He's also he must know, even though they're probably trying to keep it from him, it's getting almost no coverage. It's not on the Today Show, right?
It is on the Today Show. I was watching. The reason I'm saying this is,
yeah,
I talked about this on our podcast a couple of days ago that I just happened to watch TV from 7 to 8 in the morning, and I was switching around the network shows, not Morning Joe, not the Fox
and
show.
There was some, but
half an hour.
But they're not doing
and
it.
It was
on
all
they're not. They're not doing it on Morning Joe, right?
Okay,
they're just. Yeah. But my point is, like, I'm sure he's disappointed. It's not getting a lot of coverage, and he wants to weigh in on what's going on at home, and he knows the way to weigh in and get some coverage is to do that. All right, we got to move. There's so much here. I'm really so curious to know what you think. You're a big supporter of Israel. Mm-hmm. You're a big opponent of a deal with Iran.
Right.
You're not a huge Syria or terrorist fan. Right.
Right.
How are you feeling about Bibi currently?
Well, I think the whole question now is where is Bibi finds himself in an end game, a very difficult end game, which is he has various things on his plate that are contradictory. Wants to keep the best relationship possible with the United States. Trump is very popular in Israel, vastly more popular than Bibi is in Israel.
Oh yeah.
And I'm talking about with ordinary Israelis, and not the 3% of Israel or 3,000 Israelis who read the one big leftist paper in Israel that you would think from the New York Times is the most important paper. Yeah. But Israelis really appreciate, particularly after Biden disappointed them by being friendly and then kind of withdrawing.
Yes, sir.
His friendship. Okay, so Bibi wants to stay in good with Trump for his own domestic reasons, and also because strategically it's very important. And Trump is making this harder for him one of which is he's wanting to make a deal with Iran. Bibi's entire purpose on this earth is to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon.
All right, hold on right there. Here's Trump talking to Brett Baer about a possible Iran nuclear deal that John was just referencing.
Iran wants to trade with us, okay, if you can believe that, and I'm okay with it. I'm using trade to settle scores and to make peace. But I've told Iran, we make a deal, you're going to be very happy. But more than anything, I've told Iran very simply, because I heard somebody making my case last night on television. I didn't like it, because they were saying, there's plenty of time. There's not plenty of time. There's not plenty of time.
You feel urgency.
Well, they're not going to have a nuclear weapon, and eventually they'll have a nuclear weapon, and then the discussion becomes a much different one.
So, John, how worried are you that the president's going to make a bad deal? And well, I don't like to ask multi-part questions. How worried are you the president's going to make a bad deal with Iran?
I'm worried. I'm worried. I mean, that is the single most incoherent thing anybody has ever said on any subject ever. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon, and then they're going to have a nuclear weapon. So which is
no. I think what he's saying is they can't have one. We must use all means to stop it. Right. But that if something's not done soon, they're on the path to getting one. So we must do something soon.
Okay. Well, then I will take your Trump whispering and accept that as a translation. But I think the muddiness of what he said is in part because he is on two wildly different tracks. He has said no nuclear weapon, no enrichment of uranium, no, 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 right? And Witkoff apparently has occasionally said, well, maybe a little enrichment. You give it a little bit, you have 3%. You do
But
a little bit.
Witkoff,
And then Rubio and the Senate.
You got to edit Witkoff. You can't.
Yeah.
You got to go to the mean on Witkoff.
Right.
You can't
right.
take it.
But,
everything he says.
Right. So Rubio says no enrichment. The Assistant Secretary of State for Middle Eastern Affairs nominee before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee today said no enrichment. 52 senators, every Republican senator except Rand Paul, wrote a letter to Trump saying no enrichment. No enrichment sounds good, right?
Yeah.
But the question, I don't think, even goes to enrichment. It really goes to the program. And there was a point at which he was saying Iran must no longer have a nuclear program. And he is not saying that any longer. He is saying, meaning, I don't want to see, we'll make peace with you when you destroy your centrifuges.
Right.
He's not saying that anymore.
Right.
And so he's already taken a step in Iran's direction that is kind of surprising and unilateral too. It's like he brought up this idea of making,
but maybe it's not unilateral. Maybe it's based on knowing what the Iranians are going to ask for by Witkoff back channel.
That could be, and I'm not ruling that out, but I do think that there's a lot of the administration negotiating with itself over how hard line it's going to be.
What's a deal that? What's a deal? What are the provisions of a deal that would be good enough for hardliner John Podhoretz?
It would be that if there's a deal that the Iranians destroy their centrifuges in exchange for some form of reintegration into the world system.
And what would you want in terms of monitoring to make sure they really destroyed them and didn't start over?
Well, you basically have to have you'd have to basically have people standing there with cameras watching the centrifuges being blown up. I mean, that's monitoring,
well,
and they'd have to.
But how do you know that? How do you know they're going to take 20 of them and put them somewhere else?
Well, there are things we know. I think the answer is we know plenty, and not only do we know plenty, every indication is that Israel can feel the heartbeat of every single Iranian like the level of penetration of Iran that Israel's intelligence forces seems to have achieved is nearly supernatural. So it's a little like the aliens in the three body problem. Like, they know what you think, so you can't even think bad things about the aliens. That's what we learned from the Israeli, the assassination in Tehran and the destruction of their air defenses and the destruction of a facility that Iranians didn't think anyone in the world knew about, all of which the Israelis did. So the Israelis function as a kind of monitoring system.
Yeah, they got eyes on the ground.
I don't think that Bibi is now really in a corner, because if Bibi in a weird way needs the Iranians to be villains, like he needs them to piss Trump off so that they get a green light, and that when they get intelligence support and some backing from the United States to take out the nuclear program. Otherwise, Bibi's entire 4 decades, he has been a prime minister in 4 decades, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s, right? Since 2005, Iran not going nuclear has been the single focus of his legacy.
Totally.
And if this remains a vague thing that could be possible, particularly given the failure to see October 7th coming, he will be a failure. Israelis will judge him a failure. He will judge himself a failure.
What are your thoughts about why Trump didn't go to Israel on this trip?
I think that his people thought that he wanted to they were trying to make nice with the Arabs, and then he can go to Israel anytime. It's sort of like that. Like he doesn't need to go there. Right. He's got nothing to, I do think it's a bad sign. Yeah. And it's a sign that he doesn't want to get hectored.
Right. What do you think about his meeting with the new Syrian leader?
So I'm a little heterodox on this. I think it's probably worth a shot to see whether this guy, I don't think it's all that high a cost
Yeah.
to see if this guy who says that he no longer is ISIS and Al-Qaeda and wants to be a normalizer is. I
Yeah.
don't think it's not like Assad, when Bashar al-Assad came in and people said, "Oh, well, he's an ophthalmologist, so maybe he'll be a nice guy, unlike his evil chemical
Yeah.
weapons using father."
Yeah.
I mean, this guy has said he does not. He has cut himself loose from Islamic extremism. I don't know that we can trust him, but I don't know if there's a moment to try a carrot with a not particularly powerful country,
Yeah.
to see if it works. When you can withdraw your support, you could withdraw your affect instantly and
Yeah.
put sanctions on again.
Yeah.
I don't see why
Okay.
it's not worth the effort.
Let me show you a soundbite from the president. This would be number 11, Sam, and from Abu Dhabi. And while you watch it, John, on the back half, I'm going to say what you think the important things that occurred on the trip were besides the photo ops. So play number 11.
Companies. They're doing very well here. We work together. So it's not only the investment coming in by the hundreds of billions into our country, like you see in Oklahoma, like you see all over many of the jobs with Exxon and Boeing and so many great companies. But we work together, and the money that's made here comes back to us, and many of the contractors, I would imagine, come even for this. They come from here. Plus, a lot of the entertainment itself comes here. So it's an incredible thing. Now, here's the good news. I've been doing this for 4 days. I leave now and get onto a 42-year-old Boeing, but new ones are coming.
I call it a crap plane.
And
a crap plane.
It's been an incredible 4 days. I want to thank your family. Your family is so unbelievable, the job they've done. And your father has been really incredible. The job they've done here is incredible. And we've made it work. And, they were being wooed by others. But there's no more wooing. I think we're in pretty good shape. There's no more wooing. I've been friends with these leaders, 3 leaders in particular that we saw over the last 3, 4 days, 5 days. And they're great people. They're great people, and they love our country.
I always like to do the Seinfeld thing. Oh, they'll be wooing, Jerry. We're wooers. We'll be wooing. All right. So, John, what were the big accomplishments on the trip besides the photo ops?
Well, I mean, it depends on who
you. I'm asking you.
I'm saying it's a huge accomplishment for the Trump and Witkoff families and their personal wealth and gain.
Yeah,
so we got to stipulate that. I just got to say, okay.
How do you advance the interests of America in your view?
Okay,
if at all.
I don't think it necessarily advanced the interests of America that much, except for one thing, which is if China thinks that it had the possibility of making certain inroads, and China did broker a rapprochement, not really a rapprochement, but some kind of agreement to be not horribly monstrous to each other between Iran and Saudi Arabia during the Biden term, because Biden was so negative about Saudi Arabia in his first year. The Saudis were like, we better look to maybe cut a separate deal here or figure something out, let the Chinese in, panic the Biden people who started then being very friendly toward the Saudis. If Trump might be trying to put a bow, like a capper, in the idea that the Saudis might look east instead of west at this moment. And so that would be a real accomplishment. And the other accomplishment, I think, is literally that the Prime Minister of Abu Dhabi said today that Hamas needs to release the hostages and leave Gaza. Now, the Prime Minister of Abu Dhabi is not the Prime Minister of Qatar. He's not the guy who was their major supporter.
Yep.
But for an Arab leader, an Arab political official, to say explicitly, essentially, Hamas has to end this war and lose and leave and acknowledge its loss, is a pretty big thing. And that probably wouldn't have happened. And I think it's good for us for reasons. It's good for Israel. It's good for the world. It's good for good triumphing over evil and all kinds of things. But I think that's one thing that Trump made happen. I don't think it was his purpose in going, but often when you have American trips like this that are successful, they have weird knock-on effects that you don't
Right.
necessarily
Yep.
anticipate.
Absolutely.
I want to say
All right.
one other thing about
Yes,
him
sir.
and this trip, and that's
Yes,
it.
sir. Yes, sir.
His foreign trips during the first term were really weird. They
Yeah.
were weird, and they always had a weird energy, and strange things happened during them. And that was true when he went to Saudi Arabia in 2017,
Yes,
when
sir.
he went to Helsinki to talk to Putin,
Yeah.
when he went to talk to Kim Jong, Un, and when he
Yeah.
talked to Xi. Like, these were weird
This
meetings.
is a really good. This is a really good point.
And this it was only weird only because it's Trump being Trump. Like, Trump is just not what you expect from a president, though we should stop saying that, because
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in that sense, he is a much different president than he was the first time. Like, he went on his first foreign trip. It was totally successful. There were no blunders. There was nothing weird. There was no holding of an orb. There was no, gestures of crazy friendship to psychotic monsters. I mean, not that I'm a fan of the Gutteries or of Jolani in Syria, but nonetheless, he's not. It was a much different thing. And I think, by the way, people who are worried about Trump's effectiveness as a political force, and we should talk about some of the polling, like Harry Enton pointing out that Trump has had a good polling month.
We talked about that this morning.
Right. Okay. So he's had a good polling month, and I think this trip will only reinforce that. And so I think the hope that Trump is going to blow himself up, that I think Democrats continue to have, or liberals continue to have, you better table that. He's clearly not going to blow himself up, I don't think, as yet, anyway.
All right, we I don't want to get bogged down, and we got a lot of topics to go. So in a few more topics, we're going to get to your questions. So please raise your hand. I don't know. Did you ever see the Elvis Costello's tour with the spectacular spinning songbook?
Oh yeah, like long ago.
Yeah, well, he did it twice.
Like in the 80s.
He did in 2011, and then he did it like a few years later. Anyway, I'm going to give you like 7 choices, and we're going to do 2 or 3 of them.
Okay.
So you choose your own adventure. You think? Do you want to A, hear Trump in the Brett Baer interview talk about Bibi? B, talk about Jim Comey and seashells? C, talk about the fate of the big beautiful bill, the reconciliation package? D, talk about trade? E, talk about NBC's report about Trump wanting to send 1 million Gazans to Libya. D, Trump talking about wanting to see his new grandchild. Or, what am I on? G, F?
G.
G. Trump's True Social post attacking Bruce Springsteen and Taylor Swift.
Well, obviously we got to do the Springsteen Swift thing.
Okay, let's do that first.
One.
Let's do that first.
Yeah.
Or the other one would be whatever letter we're on, the downgrading of the U.S. credit rating. Let's do Bruce, number 17. So Trump today, in response to Bruce Springsteen in England at the start of his tour, saying the president, I think he said he was a traitor, very strong words against Donald Trump on foreign soil. And I wrote about it this morning in my newsletter. I was like, well, let's see if Bruce says it when he's back here in America. I see that highly overrated Bruce Springsteen. Again, there are a lot of things you can say about Bruce Springsteen. He's the opposite of overrated. Goes to a foreign country to speak badly about the president of the United States. Never liked him, never liked his music or his radical left politics. And importantly, he's not a talented guy. Again, very talented guy. Just a pushy, obnoxious jerk who fervently supported crooked Joe Biden, a mental incompetent fool, and our worst ever president. Blah, blah, blah. But Springsteen is as dumb as a rock, and couldn't see what was going on. Keep his mouth shut until he gets back in the country. That's just quote unquote standard fare. Then we'll see how it goes for him. So that's the Springsteen. Now here's Taylor. Yeah. No one can figure out what the peg for this was. The Springsteen one.
I know what the peg for this one is.
What is it?
The peg for this one is that Taylor Swift is now involved in the Blake Lively Justin Baldoni.
That's not a legit peg, John. That's been going on for like 3 weeks. That's not a today thing. There's no new development in that. Has anyone noticed that since I said, quote, I hate Taylor Swift, she's no longer, quote, hot? Again, Taylor Swift is still hot, so I'm not sure what he means there. So, John, what would you like to say about the battle of the bands and the president?
I think that there's a lot of juice here. He is a president and a celebrity and a showbiz figure, and being a showbiz figure is very important to him, and he brings the competitive instincts of the World Wrestling Federation to show business, which is to say people in show business usually have each other's back and they're always talking about how wonderful everybody is and hugging them and all this. And he's like, say anything about me and I'm going to crush you like a bug. And Bruce Springsteen, you're over in England, go, you stink. And, you're lousy. Your music is terrible. And this is really awful. And I don't agree. And obviously that's a ridiculous thing to say, but Springsteen, by the way, has an album out of lost tracks and stuff like that. And if
it's already out. That's right.
It's out. And anyway, I don't know how it's going to sell or whether you care. I don't even know how albums sell anymore because of Spotify. But there are people who are like going to decide they don't like Springsteen because Trump attacked him.
You're right.
And he has a broad national appeal. And generally speaking, people with broad national appeal should not do things that are offensive to their audiences. I mean, he's a man in his 70s. He's a legend. Like he can do whatever he wants. I don't care. But it is sort of like a thing.
So the thought bubble going, Lindsay, who's here regularly, brought her mom tonight. And the thought bubble for Lindsay is, Mom, the show is not usually this boring. I don't know why you're watching tonight. Show's usually actually quite compelling. I'm going to run through headlines on all these topics. Then we'll go to Lindsay and her mom. Then you and I might talk about a few more, but let me just tell everybody. Jim Comey, we should have reported this last night. I don't believe we did it all. A mistake. Jim Comey put seashells or took a picture of some seashells. The secret two developments today. The president trashed him. The seashells ostensibly represented a threat to the president, so much so that he's now going to be interviewed by the Secret Service. No surprise. That's the Comey thing. As you know, I don't like to report incremental developments in the legal cases or in the big beautiful bill progression, but it failed. The vote failed in the House committee today, so now they're going to try to vote again over the weekend. And the president put out a Truth Social post on that too, urging Republicans to vote yes. President talked about trade today. I mentioned the Trump NBC says they're going to send 1 million Gazans to Libya. And the president, I mentioned, talked about his grandkid. All right, that's pretty much it. All right, so we'll maybe double back to some of those.
Okay.
But Lindsay and Mom, welcome in. Thanks for joining. Mom, should I call you Mom or should I call you something else?
My name is Barb. Hi, Mark.
Okay, Barb. Thanks for coming. I can't remember. It's possible you have seen the show before, right? Or no?
I have seen this show before. Lindsay introduced me, and I like it.
Okay, but Barb, let's be frank. This episode's not that great.
Let's be frank. She just came over. So like how I told you, we usually watch on YouTube at like 6:15.
Yeah.
We were trying to get on early because she just walked in. So she hasn't heard all the boring stuff we've been talking about.
All right. Thank goodness. Barb, it's the best episode ever. Podhoretz, fan favorite.
Sounds really good, though.
Ladies, welcome in. Great to see you both. Tell us what's on your mind for John Podhoretz of Commentary.
Well, we're in Charleston, South Carolina.
Yep.
I am a 3-time Trump voter, very happy, proud MAGA. Barb is she'll go but I will say that your show, and I know you get this a lot, but since she's here with me, your show has, and I think I've told you this before, single-handedly made us be allowed to talk about what's going on in the world. She knows so much. We just were like, we haven't even caught up on stuff this week. I don't really have a question, but this was my favorite week in Trump's presidency. And I know, John, you said something similar. I don't think I've had this much fun watching him than like the whole, like right before the election with the McDonald's and the trash truck and the wearing the garbage man outfit. That made me so happy then, just in a different way. But seeing him on this world stage, especially in the contrast of all these books coming out about Biden, and I felt, I didn't love Biden, obviously, but I felt horrible, and we've talked about this for a long time, that Jill and the other family should have gotten him out of there, because I would never have wanted my family, and especially like her dad, who was similar, to ever have been in that kind of position. And I didn't like it on the world stage for us to look like that and look weak. And so to see that and to hear what's coming out of some of these books, even though some of it's kind of, questionable, but we can see it with our own eyes. And then to see Trump and what the pomp and circumstance in the speech that I thought was fantastic, in Saudi Arabia, and his welcome in all three, UAE, Qatar, and Saudi, was incredible. So I wanted to say I enjoyed watching it. I am curious if there's going to be any type of a committee or investigation into who was signing things for Biden and making decisions, but I don't know that we're going to get there. If there was a committee for January 6th, I feel like there should be a committee for this or a special counsel, but so I don't know if you would have any thoughts on that, but
okay.
anything else to add?
Thank you for that. First of all, I talked about this morning. There's no evidence that the president wasn't the president. That doesn't mean he didn't have weak moments, but you can wonder about it. You can say, I wonder if people were signing things for him, or if there were times when he was incapable of making decisions and others did. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I'm telling you, and as you know, I'm a big proponent of scrutiny of this president, the previous president. There's no evidence that happened. It may be evidence has been hidden, but there's literally no evidence for that. So I caution people to not go out saying, well, of course it happened. Maybe it did, but I tend to prefer evidence rather than just speculation. But some news that just broke, our friend Mark Caputo, who's on here regularly, is reporting that the audio of the her interview with Joe Biden is coming out. It's not clear to me.
We can play some if you want.
Okay. Yeah, we want to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Everything's out the window now because Mark Caputo's got the audio. And this is, of course, going to put the question of Biden's mental acuity back in sharp relief. And recently it was revealed a couple days ago that, Nora, do you have it ready or do I need to vamp?
We're getting it up.
Okay, yeah. So I'll vamp when you tell me when you're ready.
All right.
It was reported that the White House objected, and the president's private lawyer objected to the release of the Hur audio.
It's ready, Mark.
Okay, because they said it would interfere with like government security. Ridiculous, probably. Let's play for the first time almost anywhere. Some of the Joe Biden's interview with the special counsel, which led the special counsel to say that he was an old man with a bad memory or whatever he said. Play it, please.
So during this time when you were living in Chambers Road and there were documents related to the Penn Biden Center or the Biden or the cancer booster shot or your book, where did you keep papers that related to those things that you were actively working on?
Well, I don't know. This is what, 2017, 18, that area?
Yes, sir.
Remember, in this time frame, my son is either been deployed or is dying. And so it was, and by the way, there were still a lot of people at the time when I got out of the Senate that were encouraging me to run in this period, except the president. They're not a mean thing to say. I mean, he just thought that she had a better shot of winning the presidency than I did. And so I hadn't at this point, even though I'm at Penn, I hadn't walked away from the idea that I might run for office again. So if I ran again, I'd be running for president. And so what was happening though, what month did Bo die? May 30th, 2015. Was it 2015 he died?
Maybe 2015.
I think it's 2015.
I'm not sure the months are, but I think that was.
Yeah.
That's right, Mr. President.
And what's happened in the meantime is that Trump gets elected in November of 2017? 2016. All right. So, why do I have 2017 here?
That's when you left office, in January of 2017.
Okay. But that's when Trump gets sworn in January.
Right, correct.
Okay, yeah. Correct. And in 2017, Bo had passed, and this is personal. The genesis of the book promised me Dad was I know you're all close with your sons and daughters, but Bo was like my right arm, and that was my left. These guys were a year and a day apart, and they could finish each other's sentences. And Bo, I used to go home on the train in the period that I was still in the Senate. Anyway, do you remember? There was pressure, not pressure. Bo knew how much I adored him. And this sounds, maybe it sounds so, everybody knew how close we were. There was not anybody in the world who wondered whether or not, anyway. And so.
Sir, I'm wondering if this is a good time to take a break, briefly.
No, let me just keep going to get it done.
Okay, a few things. And I brought up a bunch. You had your hands up. I'm going to want all of you, if you're game, to just give your brief reaction to what we just heard. I'd say it's not, in my view, not as absolutely as bad as some might have thought, but it's pretty bad. And I think it'll be uniformly seen that way. Mark Caputo of Axios broke the story. Mark will join us on Monday on Two Way Tonight to talk about his scoop and about it. And I believe we'll hear more. That's the only clip out currently, but I believe we'll hear the whole thing. And that section is one that has been highlighted for folks based on the transcript, because just on the transcript, it's pretty painful. I'll say one more thing, and then again, I want to go around. I'll call you if you've got a brief reaction. I want to hear from you, and then we'll get to your questions if we have time. Someone said the other day, Biden was doing a brilliant thing in the interview, because when presidents can agree to sit with a special counsel, it's always time limited, right? It's one time, and it's time limited. And he said he talked slowly and meanderingly on purpose to filibuster, right? To basically not give the special counsel a chance to ask every question he might want to ask, because that answer was 4 minutes, and the special counsel didn't get anything probative in those 4 minutes. So Lindsay and Barb, you first. What did you think of that painful 4 minutes?
I thought it was painful, and I just wish, as I've heard many people say, he'd go off into the sunset and we'd stop seeing all these old clips and him falling upstairs, and just be done with it.
Luke, thoughts?
Yeah, it's a tragic situation there. It's clearly he's having some real difficulties. The fact that he didn't know when Trump was elected, which would have been November of 2016, got that confused with when he left office, and it's even all the more sad that it was put together with him talking about the tragic death of his son. So yeah, there's a lot of people who are going to have to answer a lot of questions there.
Reynolds.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what the question was.
That's what,
They give you the answer and you go back and say, what was the question? I couldn't figure out what the question was based on his answer. So if he was doing a tactical, just babbling, that was a good answer for a witness, but he gave no value. So I don't even remember what the question was. So if he was delaying on time, he did it because he didn't say anything substantial.
Right.
In that.
And again, if you recall the transcript, that's much of the interview is not useful because he does meander and have trouble remembering. Yeah. Again, interviewing a president is different than a witness in a deposition or on the stand. You're time limited. You've got to be respectful. You can't say, the witness will answer the question because he's the president, and then compounded by his obvious loss of mental acuity. Haley, thoughts?
That was my thought, was like, didn't answer the question. What was the question to begin with? So he did a good job at that. But it's just so sad. It's just so sad.
Go ahead and play the top of the thing again. Let's hear the question, since it's now become a memory game. So go ahead, Sam, and play the top again. Just the question.
So during this time, we were living in Chambers Road, and there were documents related to the Penn Biden Center or the Biden or the cancer boom shot. or your book, where did you keep papers that related to those things that you were actively working on?
All right. So I'd say there's not much in the 3.5 minutes. It's responsive. Tim, thoughts?
I mean, that's just shocking. That was the president of the United States speaking there. It was such a relatively minor story, at least not on, MAGA media, but that wasn't covered a lot. That what the judge said it was, or the prosecutor, correct? I'm just shocked that that was the president, and then that wasn't publicized more often or leaked somehow. That was shocking.
Yeah, well, because it was controlled by the administration. I have to say, I think there'll be a lot of speculation now about what would have happened in the campaign if that had been released. What month? Noah, what month was that transcript released? Do you remember? Can you say what month the transcript was released?
I don't remember offhand.
All right.
Hang on a second.
Just curious, because, I mean, it was obviously released while he was still the candidate. Because you'll recall he went and talked to the press that night when the transcript came out.
And
that was the report.
Oh, no,
That
just
was
the
the
report.
report.
The report. Sorry, the
The
report.
transcript, I think, came out after the election.
Is that true?
No.
I got it.
Everything that we talked about and the quotes for this were in hers.
No, but when did the full transcript come out? I thought it came out with the report.
March 12th, 2024.
The report or
transcript?
The transcript. And what about the report? I think they were simultaneous.
February?
Really? Why would there have been a delay?
February. Report
February.
was February. March was transcript.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when was the debate?
June 27th.
June. So if in March that audio had been released rather than just the transcript, John, let's go to you.
Yeah.
Do you think he would have been forced off the ticket right then?
Yes.
They could have said he had a cold.
They could have said anything. Doesn't matter what they say. The Democratic Party panic came when we saw Biden unvarnished, right? That was the story of the debate. He was out without protection. And this transcript would have been him being interviewed without protection, getting years wrong. We read the words. It's hearing it, and it was bad. And in one way, it was wildly successful because Hurd didn't prosecute him or said, I could have prosecuted him. But no one would ever convict him if he testified on a stand because he's a senile old man. That's what Hur said that got everybody attacking her that day, right? But release the sound of Biden talking, and you can make a Machiavellian case of the hidden hand. There's this whole argument that Eisenhower used to bungle press conferences deliberedly to baffle the press and not say anything on national security matters by talking incoherently. And Fred Greenstein, who had been one of his press aides, wrote a whole book about how this was an Eisenhower deliberate strategy. If Biden did that, he's a genius because it got him, it evaded him getting into trouble with the special counsel that he named in his own case or his son's case. But that's why not the son's case. This was about the mishandling of classified information. We hear that the entire Democratic Party. You think George Clooney's op-ed helped kill him? This killed him. Like this would have killed him. There would have been versions of the Clooney op-ed 3 months earlier.
Aaron, thoughts?
I think Mr. Hur is a professional and has probably seen people filibuster before. And so I think what he said about him being a well-meaning older man with a poor memory is probably accurate. And I just think it's very sad, and not somebody who's a fan of Joe Biden, but I don't like how his family and the party put him out there to do that. I don't think that's right. And I just hate how it seems like, our families have always been the structure of America. And it seems like in politics, they're just like sacrificed for whatever political gain people are trying to get.
You bring up a really good point, and this goes to the whole thing I've been talking about all week about how one of the failures of the Democrats, besides to just describe what we could all see fairly and aggressively, was the Democrats fought back and said how outrageous that Hur characterized the president the way he did. It wasn't his place to do it. And there's a great interview between Adam Schiff and a CNN anchor. His name is Jake Tapper, in which Adam Schiff says, oh, Hur shouldn't have done it, outrageous characterization, not his place, etc. And Tapper surprisingly doesn't push back at all on Adam Schiff. You can find that on YouTube if you wish. But of course now, as you just I think sort of suggested, Hur was extremely gentle. Hur probably could have gone to the cabinet and said somebody needs to invoke the 25th Amendment.
Yeah.
Listen to this audio, and instead he said the truth. And I bet you, I don't know if he'll speak out or not, but I bet you, just understanding humans, I bet you he really struggled with how to characterize it, but felt the Democrats characterized her characterization that you read as gratuitous and mean-spirited and political. And I think, in fact, he did the guy a huge favor. And I think, of course, if let's say it wasn't the president of the United States, but that guy was accused of some crime, was being investigated for some crime, and the prosecutor, brought him into the grand jury and interviewed him before the grand jury, that's what the prosecutor would say. He'd say to his boss or her boss, well, we can't indict this old man because in trial, imagine what it'd be like in the trial if he couldn't testify on his own behalf if he wanted to, right?
Yeah.
I think we need to, the point here is Hur was saying effectively that Biden was guilty of mishandling classified information.
Yeah.
But that he could not successfully prosecute a case, not because he was the president, but because the jury would say, I'll give him a break.
Yeah.
Out of it. And we don't pursue prosecutions. Prosecutorial discretion says you only bring a case you think you can win.
Yeah.
That is a requirement in a weird way that is part of the Justice Department's own.
Yeah, totally agree. So
okay.
I'm building on what you all have said, and here's how I think about it now. What Hur said was like a clarion call to say, if the guy can't be prosecuted, there's a big problem here. Like, he shouldn't be president. It's like harder to be president than it is to be an accused criminal. But we can't make him an accused criminal because he's not up to defending himself. Right? Yeah. That's basically now what he was saying, and that audio tape is just so vivid. Mr. M.G. Wall, thoughts on the audio?
A few things. Of course, dementia and age, they unfortunately go together for many, many people. But there are videos that are available on YouTube of hearings that Biden participated in when he was still sitting on the Judiciary Committee. And there are questions of nominations for judges and things like that. And if you watch those videos, I've watched many of them, and I've watched some of them with one of my sons-in-laws who happens to be an attorney. And his comment on some of the questions Biden was asking is that based on those questions, he was unfit to be an attorney, let alone serving in the United States Senate. So this, I don't know if cover-up is quite the right term to use, but this business of hiding Biden's lack of intellectual capacity goes back 30 or 40 years.
Yeah, but the people of Delaware had
John.
every opportunity. People of Delaware had every opportunity every 6 years to make that judgment about Biden. And they kept him there for 36 years.
And by the way, Barack Obama made him vice president of the United States too. So, all right, we got to stop. I apologize. We're out of time. Very grateful to y'all. I know a lot of you had questions about other topics, but really glad to have all of you weigh in on this important audio. And again, remind you, on Monday, morning meeting will be on at 9 a.m., but two important guests will be joining us Monday on a special 2-hour edition of this program. In the normal 6 o'clock hour Eastern time, Mark Caputo, who broke the story of this audio, and we'll have more to say about it over the weekend. He'll join us. And then extra hour, 7 Eastern time. Please join us for an incredible conversation with an incredible person about the importance of understanding what your government does through data. Incredibly important, whether you're not just if you're a reporter or an academic or whatever, but if you're a citizen and you really want to understand what your country's doing and might do, you need data, and you need it well presented and explained. And Steve Ballmer, formerly the CEO of Microsoft, founder of USA Facts, has figured out a way to take government data and make it accessible and usable, and to inform citizens about what their government is doing. So Steve's going to talk about his organization. He's also going to lay out some of the latest work they're done, some of the upcoming work they're doing on taxes, what the tax rates are in America, budgeting, all the things that are going on in the reconciliation bill will arm you to be a better citizen and a better consumer of all the things that are going to be playing out in the next few weeks. So please join us Monday night, 7 Eastern time, after our usual hour, Monday the 19th, for a special edition Steve Ballmer, former Microsoft topper. John Podhoretz, closing remarks, because I got to go to the Knicks game.
Go to the Knicks game. Good luck.
Yeah,
This could be world historic tonight.
Big night for New York basketball. Yes. It's only been 50 years since the Knicks have won a championship. No rush. Thank you all for watching. I will see you Monday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time for the morning meeting, and then again join us for a special 120-minute edition of Two Way tonight, including Steve Ballmer at 7 Eastern. Have a great weekend, everybody. Let's go Knicks.